Namaskaram, everyone. I come from Melbourne, Australia. The Indigenous name for Melbourne is Naarm, the land of the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nations. Indigenous Australian culture has remained unchanged for 65,000 years. As such, there are a number of protocols in screen agency funding or broadcaster greenlighting for Indigenous Australian content. But before I begin, I want to explain the reason behind our production company Warrior Tribe Films. In order to tell screen stories anchored in Hindu Dharma within the Western screen industry, we have to speak a language they understand. They will not understand, let alone be able to pronounce Kshatriya. A quick Google search incorrectly attributes caste to Jati and Varna, even foreign to Bharatiya diaspora. Western lens to a point understands Indigenous and the impact of British colonialism, but rarely do they action it with any meaningful change. I understand that tribe can be a loaded term, and I use that to hold up a mirror in colonial spaces and a resistance and reminder of the British-enforced Criminal Tribes Act. When I say Indigenous, I mean the knowledge of the first people of Bharat who practice Sanatan Dharma. Indigenous does not mean primitive. It is a reverence of Mother Earth, not extraction of her resources. I was born in Lautoka, Fiji. My ancestors were Girmitya. It was a loophole that was used after slavery was abolished. 5-year agreements with impossible labour quotas. Tricked by the British into Africa, the Caribbean, Mauritius, and Fiji. Fiji had the highest suicide rate. They were raped, beaten, whipped, killed, and given food with maggots and meant for animals. Many tried to swim back to Bharat, told that Fiji was not too far from their village. As a consequence, many drowned. Children 7 years old, classified as adults, made to work. Many children in their hundreds died on plantations. Many descendants of Girmitya feel like, to this day, like forgotten children of Bharat. The British ensured conflict with the local Indigenous people on every colony, divide and conquer in full effect. Being Girmitya feels like a perpetual state of spiritual homelessness, forgotten by a motherland, not welcome as descendants of slaves in your current one. Although many Girmitya Hindu pujas and rituals have remained in a 200-year time capsule, they never gave up their Hindu dharma. My parents migrated to Australia in 1982 because of cultural tensions and wanting a better education for their children. I could barely speak English. Everybody was white. I remember thinking as a young child when I started school that my new friends were funny and joking with me. They even gave me nicknames. My poor mother had to tell me that they were racist slurs. Brown wasn't a thing. We were called black. We were the ideal target to pick on, and I was. Sometimes 10 fights a week in high school. I was no pushover. I fought back until I realised that it became a game to them. Who could make me react the most? And with that, the racism got worse. Watching TV and films, I quickly realised people from Bharat weren't treated well. Examples include Indiana Jones, our Kali Mata so badly disrespected, and for some reason they thought people from Bharat ate monkey brains. Hey Hey It's Saturday was a leading TV show in Australia for many years. Kamal, and I'm not mispronouncing his name, He changed his name to be pronounced Kamal because the Australians would call him Camel. Once they smashed white powder onto his face to make him look more white. That was a type of humiliation that was never questioned. To them, it was funny. It was just a joke. Then, a week from my 12th birthday, the unthinkable happened. My mother was killed in a car accident when her car was hit by a speeding van on the way to pick us kids up from school. I lost all contact with my mother's side of the family. I lost all sense of belonging, place, and identity. So to find a place of sense, a place of belonging, I became as Australian as I thought I could. I thought if I was like them, I'd become accepted and the racism would stop. So the transition of assimilation went into overdrive. My father remarried soon after, and my stepmother was deeply dharmic. To her credit, our house became a Hindu temple, open every Thursday night to the general public, sometimes housing up to 200 people for Hindu festivals. I instantly felt incredibly drawn to Shiv Bhagwan and Kali Mata. I came to find out that my paternal family had a very long history of Hindu dharma dating back countless generations. But outside of home, the racism didn't stop. The Simpsons and Family Guy's cartoons appeared, making it acceptable to make fun of Hindu dharma and people from Bharat. Apu from The Simpsons was our black minstrel. And what hurt the most was seeing people interviewed from Bharat saying it was funny, that it was just a joke. So my identity became a mixture of islander and black. I realize now I became scary, unapproachable, and dangerous. I'd rather be feared than targeted was my thought process. But then something incredible happened. 24 years later, after I had lost my mother, I found out that my maternal grandma, my Nani, who I thought had passed away decades ago, was still alive and waiting for me in the same house in Fiji. People laughed at my Australian accent when I spoke Hindi, so as a young boy I stopped speaking it. The first time I had to speak to Nani, mind you, Nani could speak fluent Tamil, Hindi, and native Fijian, but no English. So the first time I went to speak to her in Hindi, I was so nervous. I thought she'd be ashamed of me, but she was just so happy to hear her grandson talk. It was because of her I started speaking Fiji Hindi and questioning my roots and my history, because Nani accepted me for who I was. She understood that life wasn't easy, and above all, I was her blood. When you lose a parent in such a traumatic manner, you never tend to dream of the future as a child because you know that can be snatched away from you at any given moment. But I dared to dream of life with Nani, my son, and myself. Nani was there so that my son could understand his roots. On my last visit to Nani, she passed away 30 minutes before I could see her, and she never got to meet my son. I felt like such a failure as a father and as a grandson. How could I pass on the magic of our roots without my Nani? I searched online, joined Hindu Dharma Facebook groups, rang temples. I faced vehement abuse online for asking questions, and temples just seemed annoyed to deal with me. If I wasn't doing this for my son, I would have given up. But eventually I came across two people that completely changed my life. Zana Joshi and Dr. Indu Vishwanathan. Please follow their work. They spent many hours with me and sent me their work, a collection of podcasts, videos, articles, not to forget one-on-one Zoom sessions. Whenever I had a question, they were there for me, and they continue to be there. It is why I affectionately call them Didi, and Akka. Their work was and is life-changing. Every molecule in my body completely shifted. I began to understand why colonialism wanted to erase my connection to Hindu Dharma. It was our strength within, eternal. I want to make one thing clear. I understand it as an economic resource for Bharat, but I am not Bollywood, nor am I Hollywood. My work is indigenous, dharmic, and my karma. Importance not just on the end result, but also the entire process of filmmaking, a dharmic process of sharing bhakti and gyan through karma. Through my trauma, I connect with current and younger generations so they don't have to go through what I went through growing up. From concept to post-production, I collaborate with elders and Hindu dharmic organizations around the world. Some of my projects include Bharatanatyam, broadcast nationally on Australian broadcast channel ABC, a piece about an incredible Tamil family who banter about what it's like to work together as a Bharatanatyam family and their mother as a guru before their first performance in COVID lockdowns with 200 dancers on stage. Namaste Yoga, broadcast nationally on ABC TV, which we're about to launch globally, and there are flyers on the table over there about it. Please take one because we are announcing how we can get it out to the Hindu community first, and that is our main priority. Namaste Yoga is about a 10-year-old boy named Shiv who is ashamed of being Hindu. And when he gets into a fight at school, the only way to avoid suspension is by doing mandatory lunchtime yoga classes. Cue, he's appropriating very white homeroom school teacher, Miss Blanche. It is about the cultural appropriation of yoga and the effect that it has on the self-worth of Hindu children when their culture is appropriated, commoditized, and then sold back to them. 5-year grandma. I call it 5 years grandma because I had her for 5 years. Our docu-series in development is a love letter to my son about finding Nani and the importance of our connection to Hindu Dharma as he comes closer to the inevitability of having to deal with racism living in Australia. I have several projects in development. Every step of the way, I face an exhausting task. Funding is determined by Australian screen agencies. None of them have any understanding of Hindu Dharma. Australia's Bharatiya population is now the largest diaspora in the country. And in the same way capitalism drove Western appropriation of yoga, the same will come for Hindu Dharma if we do not have content for our younger generations. We cannot understand or we cannot underestimate the greed and the audacity of capitalism, particularly in the West. This is an advertisement that ran on Australian TV with significant cultural and religious figures having dinner. The advertisement is encouraging everyone to eat lamb, including Ganesh Bhagwan. Through the grace of Mata, I have come through a number of Screen Australia and state government screen agency talent initiatives. I can leverage available funding, but it cannot be done alone. Dharmic support is needed from producers, media, broadcasters, distributors, philanthropy, from Bharat and the Hindu Dharma community around the world, and everyone in this room. Australia has also signed a film and TV treaty with Bharat. It is a significant moment. My concern is that Hindu Dharma will be conflated with Bollywood. That narrative is already in full force. It is being announced as Bollywood. It is imperative this is treated with a sense of urgency. I want to thank the World Hindu Congress for inviting me to speak with you today. Please don't hesitate to come speak to me. I would love to collaborate with you and work with you. Namaste, Jai Shri Kali Mata, Jai Shri Santoshi Mata, Om Namah Shivaya.